Wait, don't skip this. What I'm about to reveal in the next 8 minutes is going to absolutely shock you, and it's something that affects gun owners in over a dozen states right now. The Supreme Court just handed down an 8-1 decision that completely dismantles Second Amendment preservation acts across the country. SAPA laws, the shields that states like Missouri, Montana, and Texas put up to protect gun owners from federal overreach, just got crushed by the highest court in the land. And here's the thing nobody's prepared for. What happens next is going to change everything about how states can resist federal gun control. Gun owners across America need to hear this now, because the ripple effects are already starting. And if you're new here, welcome to 2A Updates, your trusted source for Second Amendment law breakdowns, Supreme Court rulings, and real pro-freedom updates you won't hear anywhere else. So let me tell you exactly what just happened. And I need you to stay with us until the end because this gets complex fast and the implications are massive. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 in a consolidated case that struck down state Second Amendment preservation acts, declaring them unconstitutional under the Supremacy Clause. Now, for those who don't know, SAPA laws were basically state-level legislation that said, we will not enforce federal gun laws, we will not help federal agents enforce them, and in some cases, we will actually penalize state and local officials who cooperate with federal gun enforcement. Missouri's version was probably the strongest. It actually allowed citizens to sue law enforcement officers who helped the feds with gun cases. These laws were passed in red states as a direct response to federal overreach. States looked at Biden administration policies, ATF rule changes, proposed federal bans, and they said, not in our state, not with our resources, not with our officers. It was nullification in everything but name. And for a few years, it worked. Federal agents in Missouri and Montana were basically operating alone. Local sheriffs wouldn't help them. State police wouldn't coordinate. Prosecutors wouldn't share information. It created a brick wall between federal gun enforcement and state cooperation, but the Biden Justice Department challenged these laws, arguing that states cannot interfere with federal law enforcement, that the Supremacy Clause makes federal law supreme, and that SAPA laws were essentially state obstruction of federal officers. And the Supreme Court just agreed. 8 justices said these laws go too far. The only dissent came from Justice Thomas, and I'll get to his reasoning in a moment because it's actually really important for understanding where this could go next. Here's what this means for you right now, and you deserve to know this. If you live in a state that passed a SAPA law, Missouri, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and several others, your state just lost a major tool for resisting federal gun control. What does that mean practically? It means local and state law enforcement can now be compelled to cooperate with federal agents on gun cases again. It means if the ATF shows up in your town to enforce pistol brace rules or investigate alleged violations of the National Firearms Act, your local sheriff can't refuse to help them anymore. The legal shield is gone, but here's the part that's critical, and I promise you this is where it gets really concerning. The court's majority opinion, written by Chief Justice Roberts, goes further than just striking down SAPA laws. It actually creates a framework that says states have an affirmative duty to not interfere with federal law enforcement operations. That language, affirmative duty, that's strong. That's not just saying states can't pass SAPA laws. That's saying states must actively ensure they're not obstructing federal enforcement. Do you see where this could lead? This could be used to compel state cooperation with federal gun registries, federal red flag enforcement, federal confiscation orders. They didn't expect this to happen this way with this broad of a ruling. Let me break down the legal reasoning because understanding this is crucial. The majority said that under the Supremacy Clause, when federal law and state law conflict, federal law wins. That's Constitutional Law 101, right? But then they went further. They cited a Reconstruction-era case about southern states refusing to help enforce civil rights laws, and they drew a parallel. They said just like southern states couldn't nullify federal civil rights enforcement, red states today can't nullify federal firearms enforcement. That comparison is going to infuriate people, equating gun rights resistance with Jim Crow resistance. But that's the legal logic they used. Justice Thomas, in his lone dissent, argued something really interesting. He said the 10th Amendment protects state sovereignty, and that includes the right of states not to participate in federal enforcement schemes. He pointed out that states can't be commandeered by the federal government. That's established precedent. The federal government can pass laws, but it can't force states to enforce them. Thomas said SAPA laws weren't interfering with federal enforcement. They were just states declining to help, which is constitutionally protected. He also argued that the Second Amendment should factor into this analysis, that states have a legitimate interest in protecting their citizens' gun rights from federal overreach, especially when federal policies of questionable constitutionality are being enforced. But 8 justices disagreed with Thomas. 8 justices said these laws cross the line from non-cooperation into active interference, especially the provisions that penalize state officials for helping federal agents. And now those laws are dead. They're struck down nationwide. States are already scrambling to figure out what this means. Missouri's Attorney General issued a statement this morning, basically saying they're going back to the drawing board. Montana's governor is calling for the legislature to find a new approach. Texas, which had a SAPA-style law pending, just shelved it indefinitely. Here's the hidden angle that no one else is talking about, and this is absolutely crucial. This ruling doesn't just affect gun laws. It affects the entire resistance framework that red states have been building against federal overreach on multiple issues. Immigration sanctuary cities operated on a similar logic. We won't help ICE. We won't enforce federal immigration law. Those policies are now legally vulnerable based on this exact same reasoning. Blue states that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement can now be sued and lose under this precedent. The court just created a weapon that can be used both ways. Today, it's hitting red state gun protections. Tomorrow, it could hit blue state immigration protections. That's the hidden bombshell here. Now let's talk about who benefits and who gets hit by this. Obviously, the Biden administration and federal law enforcement agencies benefit enormously. The ATF just got their partners back. They can walk into any state and expect cooperation from local police, state troopers, county sheriffs. Their enforcement capacity just multiplied. Gun control advocates are celebrating because they see this as removing obstacles to federal gun policy. If the federal government passes an assault weapons ban or a registry requirement, states can't build walls against it anymore. Who gets hit? Gun owners in red states who thought their state governments had their backs. Those SAPA laws weren't just symbolic, they were actually providing real protection. Federal agents don't have unlimited resources. When they had to operate completely alone without any state help, their enforcement was limited. Now they've got force multipliers everywhere. State and local officers who personally disagree with federal gun laws but were protected by SAPA provisions, they're now in a tough spot. They either cooperate with enforcement they find unconstitutional, or they risk their jobs and potential federal charges for obstruction. So what happened next? This is a turning point for gun owners, and we need to think strategically. Red states are going to try to find new approaches that comply with this ruling, but still protect gun rights. You're already seeing proposals for things like state laws that deprioritize resources away from federal gun enforcement without explicitly banning cooperation. You're seeing proposals to defund any state agency that voluntarily helps with federal gun cases. You're seeing proposals to create state-level due process protections that could slow down federal actions. These might survive constitutional scrutiny where SAPA didn't, but it's uncertain. There's also going to be a massive push in Congress. Pro-gun representatives are going to introduce legislation to restrict ATF funding, to clarify the limits of federal gun authority, to protect state non-cooperation. Whether any of that passes depends entirely on who controls Congress and the White House. But the legislative battlefield just became more important than ever. And here's what gun owners need to understand. This fight is far from over. Yes, we lost SAPA shields. But the underlying issue hasn't changed. Federal gun control policies are often unconstitutional, often exceed congressional authority, and often violate the Second Amendment. Those challenges continue in the courts. What this ruling did was remove one particular tool from the toolbox, but there are other tools. States can still challenge federal laws as unconstitutional. States can still pass strong state-level gun protections. States can still elect sheriffs who philosophically oppose federal overreach and who will exercise discretion in how they allocate their limited resources. Here's my expert interpretation of where this goes. The Supreme Court just made a strategic decision that's going to have unintended consequences. They thought they were settling the SAPA question, but they actually opened up a much bigger can of worms about federalism, state sovereignty, and the limits of federal power. You're going to see more litigation, not less. You're going to see states testing the boundaries of what this ruling actually prohibits. And you're going to see a political backlash in red states where voters are furious that the Supreme Court just told their state governments they can't protect them from federal overreach. Thank you for being here. Your support strengthens this movement. I really read every single comment, and I know how passionate you are about defending the Second Amendment and state sovereignty. This ruling is a setback, but it's not the end. We've faced setbacks before, and we've come back stronger. The key is staying informed, staying engaged, and making sure our elected officials know we expect them to keep fighting. Don't hesitate. Drop a comment right now and tell me what state you're in and how you think this ruling affects you. Are you in a SAPA state feeling betrayed? Are you in a blue state worried about what comes next? Hit that like button if you think this is a dangerous expansion of federal power. And make absolutely sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because this story is just beginning. States are going to respond. Congress is going to respond. There will be new legal challenges. You need to stay updated, and I'm going to be covering every single development as it happens. The next video is going to dive into exactly what each affected state is doing in response, what the new resistance strategies look like, and what gun owners can do right now to protect themselves legally in this new environment. You don't want to miss that. This is a critical moment for the Second Amendment and for federalism itself. Share this video with every gun owner you know. Let's make sure people understand what just happened and what it means. I'll see you in the next one. Stay armed, stay informed, stay free.